So we are demanding that the president actually deschedule and decriminalize cannabis. The cannabis should not be in the Controlled Substance Act, and that we actually need a situation where we are removing the legal barriers that people are facing around employment, licensing, housing, benefits, and immigration, right? Also, this is time for the president to really focus with the Congress to actually push forward federal legislation. The federal legislation that's been introduced, like the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, includes the decriminalization, that includes resentencing, expungement, and the federal government funding the states to do expungement as well. And so, we think that this is super critical. And we also really want people to understand that we are excited to have this conversation, but are very clear about what we know is necessary. We've seen cannabis regulation happening across the country, and we know what works and what's best for communities.
So can you talk about the MORE Act, which stands for Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, passed twice by the House?
Yeah, so this is the first federal cannabis regulation bill that passed in Congress in the House of Representatives. It's passed twice. The current iteration of this bill is in the Senate, and that's the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act. And those things kind of marry a lot of the same things that really work to do the things that I've been talking about: descheduling, decriminalizing, providing relief to communities most impacted, as well as reinvesting in communities from the tax revenues that we're getting.
So now Biden is saying the governors have to do the same. How many states? We're talking recreational marijuana legal in 19 states, Washington, D.C., and Guam. Where do you see movement there? And who is most impacted by these laws?
So what we know is that cannabis laws have impacted millions of people around the country. And we also know that it's disproportionately impacting communities of color, right? And so when we are looking at these pardons that are really trying to remove legal barriers at the federal level, it's mostly impacting, there's a disproportionate amount of people that are communities of color. But what we also know is, and why I keep coming back to the work that Congress needs to do, is that even if states create pardons, there's still people that are still going to be impacted because the federal barriers have not been changed, right? So governors are, with governors, we really want them to expeditiously move pardons forward, but we recognize that a lot of that is going to be impacting communities of color, but we really need the federal government to remove the barriers now. If the president understands that cannabis legalization or cannabis regulation or cannabis prohibition has created barriers for people getting access to housing, employment, housing, benefits, and really, and for us, we're including the conversation of deportation and detention. Let's not only have the conversation of the descheduling of cannabis, but also let's have the conversation of changing the administrative barriers that are impeding people from being full participants in society.